Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple courts, he found people sitting at tables exchanging money. So he made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. He said, "Get these out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a market." John 2:13 through 16. This gospel story, which took place right here, is a dramatic foreshadowing of the violent clash that would take place between Jesus, the Jewish high priest, and the priestly aristocracy that profited from temple activities. As Jesus walked among the sellers who were preying on the poor and the desperate, Jesus became angry and filled with righteous indignation. By doing what he did at the holiest site in Judaism, at the most important religious event of the year, Jesus was creating an attention-grabbing incident.
As Jesus walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind so that God's work might be revealed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world." When he had said this, he spat on the ground and made mud with the saliva and spread the mud on the man's eyes, saying to him, "Go, wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. Then he went and washed and came back able to see.
So why should you be concerned about corruption at Trinity Wall Street? If you are a member of the congregation, you should be very concerned. You are getting screwed big time as the legal owners of the parish, all its assets, and its huge $9 billion endowment, all of which you have an obligation to manage by electing a real vestry each year. Except the congregation does not get to elect the vestry at Trinity. It is hand-picked by the rector and his so-called nominating committee, chosen by him, when there is a rector, which is most of the time, except now, when the former rector, William Lupfer, suddenly and mysteriously resigned in January 2020 and left without a trace or a new rector. Very, very unusual. Now that role is being filled by his good friend and his hand-picked vicar, Philip Jackson. If you are simply a Christian, you should be concerned about what takes place at the richest parish in all of Christendom anywhere on earth. Trinity Church Wall Street is more famous than any other parish anywhere because of its unique location at the head of Wall Street, the symbol of global capitalism, at the best-known crossroads in the world, Wall Street and Broadway, its unequaled wealth, and Trinity's long, more than 320-year history as the oldest religious institution in New York. If you're interested in New York City generally, and Lower Manhattan specifically, you should be concerned about one of this city's most prominent and significant institutions, Trinity Church Wall Street. If you are simply concerned about institutional morality and legitimate elections, you should also be concerned about what takes place at Trinity Church Wall Street. So what exactly is the essential conspiracy that takes place at Trinity Wall Street one day each year, this year today, June 9, 2020, as it has every year, year after year? It is to ensure that the congregation does not get to choose its own vestry. Most of all, so the congregation does not get control of the almost $9 billion in assets, and more specifically, not get to decide how those funds are spent and find out how those funds are being spent, such as former Rector James Cooper spending $12 million on a townhouse as his residence, a townhouse that was not even physically inside the parish. That is just one small example. If the congregation elected its vestry instead of the rector appointing the vestry illegally, then the congregation, by way of its vestry of concerned members of the congregation, would get to see all the financial data about the parish it never gets to see now. The salaries and all the benefits and expensive housing for the Trinity clergy, what other funds are spent and how much, why decisions are made, or even what decisions are made on behalf of the parish. The congregation, the owners of the parish, see and are told nothing about how Trinity Wall Street really operates or spends funds from the $9 billion endowment. All it gets to see is a pro forma useless annual audit which contains no detail at all. Members of the congregation cannot even attend and observe so-called vestry meetings unless they ask special permission and are allowed to do so by the rector. Trinity Wall Street is in fact a huge real estate company that also subsidizes a church, but all of its $9 billion in assets are tax-free at every level, federal, state, and city. The Trinity staff is huge, although you will not find it listed anywhere, and most of the staff is there to manage real estate and investments and has no religious duties at all. All of this can only be done on behalf of the congregation, as Trinity is a huge New York State not-for-profit corporation and must abide by the rules of incorporation, except the rector and his appointed vestry do not meet those necessary requirements. The one key regulation as a membership organization chartered in New York State, Trinity must hold annual real elections to elect its board in the case of a church called the vestry, except Trinity does not do so. Trinity stages a sham election each year, as it is doing today, June 9, 2020, in which the only candidates allowed are handpicked by the rector or vicar this year, and there are exactly as many openings on the so-called vestry as there are candidates appointed by the rector to be on the ballot, so that the congregation does not even have a choice of which of the rector's picks to vote for. There is no other way allowed to be on the ballot, no matter how many signatures a member of the congregation might collect, and no one is allowed to write in another candidate or even vote against any of the rector's choices. The entire process is rigged and illegal. And how about this? In every other Anglican parish, the vestry logically is made up of members of that congregation, those who actually worship and are part of the parish. Not at Trinity. Half, 50% of those chosen to be allowed on this year's ballot are not members of this parish, do not worship at Trinity, and are congregants elsewhere around the country. Most of the Trinity congregation will never ever even meet many of the members of the rector's vestry, have no idea who they are or why they were chosen. And of course, none of them get to meet the congregation before the election or answer questions from members of the congregation. Why even more control for the rector and his inner circle when many of the members of the vestry have no ties to Trinity and are never there, and all they know about Trinity is what the rector wants to tell them? The good news this year, if you want to call it that, is that 50% of those on the so-called ballot this year are carefully chosen members of the Trinity congregation, an all-time high for modern times. In past years, well over half, some years almost all of the so-called vestry have not been members of Trinity's congregation if you go back a decade or more. It does not even stop there. The so-called vestry elections, the most important event all year in a parish, at Trinity are made invisible. There is never any mention of the upcoming vestry elections in the months and weeks prior to the so-called election, and you will never, ever hear the rector or vicar on a Sunday morning ask the congregation would any of them like to submit their names for the next vestry election. On the very expansive Trinity website, you have to dig deep to find anything at all about the vestry. and all you will find is almost nothing. Ironically or not, the vestry is not even listed under Trinity leadership. Even today, the so-called vestry election is being held. If you go to the Trinity Wall Street website, on its front page, all today's activities are listed clearly, except the so-called vestry election, nowhere to be seen. Why? For the same reason as all the rest of it. The rector or victor and their inner circle want to do nothing to make the so-called vestry visible. They want it to be completely invisible to the congregation. The problem is, and I am not an attorney, so I cannot say for sure, but this sure looks like a criminal conspiracy to defraud the Trinity Wall Street congregation for purposes of one or a few controlling the parish's vast fortune without the consent of the congregation.